Okay. Maybe can you come? I think if you can come near the microphone.
Okay, the microphone has been moved down now, so perhaps it's more clear.
Do you have the microphone? Then you can ask the question again, please, if you don't mind. It was not very clear.
I mean, that's
Yes, that's better. Okay.
I mean, that's according to the disaster risk matrix, will be divided 4 or 5 levels, and depends on each level. We have different actions from the disaster agencies, such as the highest level in Vietnam is 5, number 5, and in the matrix which you introduced yesterday is the fourth level. With the danger, it means that it's the most dangerous disaster. This means the government will have a lot of schedule for disaster control, and the lower level, that means the fourth level or the third level in your disaster risk matrix. The action for disaster management is, will depends on the province or district. That means the local official. And I want to know that the action depends on the disaster control. It will be what can we devise the I mean that which official or which ministries or which agency will in charge of disaster control depends on the disaster risk matrix which you introduced yesterday. I mean that the action depends on each level in risk matrix which you introduced yesterday for disaster control.
Okay, Gerard, did you get that? Thank you.
I heard the question. Thank you. I'm not sure that we can tell you exactly how within the system of Vietnam, how best things should be organized, because it will depend a lot on the administrative situation in Vietnam, how the administration is divided, how disaster management is arranged. That changes from one country to the other. So just let me give you examples of some other countries to help you perhaps understand the different possibilities that are there. And maybe Elizabeth will talk in a moment to give us examples from South Africa. I can give you example from Ireland, where the primary, what we call the primary response agency, the agency which has to begin any response or begin to plan, is always the local authority. And then if the disaster is at a certain level, a high level, and the local authority cannot have all of it needs, all the resources it needs to deal with a problem which is coming, it can go to the national level, and it can get resources from the national level if it needs more people or more cash or more trucks or something like that. But that's one system. In other countries, everything is controlled at the national level. From what you said, in Vietnam, for the very highest level of warning, it's responsibility at the national level, but below that, it's responsibility more at district level or provincial level. So a lot depends on exactly how the disaster management is arranged in your country. I think you need both. You need to have a national coordination from the top, which can, particularly for the very large disasters, coordinate response and bring in resources from across the whole of the country, the whole of government. But many disasters, even natural disasters, are quite local in their impact. And often the best people to deal with an impact in a city or a town are the people who live there, the people who know that city, who know that town, who know that district very well. So you need to have both a national structure, but very active structures at the local level, community level, city level, district level, regional level. So disaster management needs to be organized on many, many different levels. And then as each individual hazard comes, because no two hazards are the same, as each individual hazard comes, it's for the disaster management authorities to decide how best they should address that. The important thing is that we're looking here, as well as responding to the disaster, at preparing for it. So from the Met Service point of view, you can give warnings now, as you do, of course, for tropical cyclones and so on, many, many days in advance. So the local, particularly at the local level, that allows the authorities, the disaster management authorities, to prepare effectively, hopefully, against what might happen. So maybe I'll pass over to Elizabeth now, and she'll talk a little bit about how these things are organised in South Africa, if that's okay, Elizabeth.
Yes, of course. I actually had this in my presentation, but I think, Sam, if it's all right, if I bring it in now, since this has come up, and then maybe we can just repeat it a little bit later. But I'm going to just share my screen. So this was part of my presentation for later on. So in the top right-hand corner, well, let me first check. Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yes, clear.
So in the top right-hand corner, this risk matrix, and we are going to discuss it later on this afternoon, you'll see that what we've done in South Africa is we've given numbers to every yellow, orange, and red level. What our disaster managers went and did is assigned those numbers, they gave an action. And I think that's what you're asking is, what are those actions? But we as the Met Office cannot determine the actions. So our disaster managers at our workshops that we did around the country decided if it's a level 1, then only the disaster management officer makes that decision because it's only a minor impact. The slide is too small to show once you move to 10, but I can share this with you. Once you move to 10, it really becomes quite a political action. And it's definitely something, as you were saying also in your highest level of 5, it's more of a national level. And that's the same with us. So once we're moving down to 9 and 10, it definitely becomes more of a political decision and higher people in the hierarchy are notified. So this is just an example of what we've done in South Africa. As far as I understand, we're the only country that have assigned the numbers, but that's mainly for the disaster managers to know where we are and then what actions they need to take. But it's all the way down to municipal level for us. I'm not too sure how Vietnam is divided, but it is that's going quite low down, but it reaches that level and then working the whole way up depending on the level of impact that that we are expecting. So these are the actions, but as I said, it's not something we as the Met Office determined. This was done working with our disaster managers. Does that help at all?
Okay. Was that okay? I think there was also a question of, if I understood it right, in addition to the explanations that you have provided, the fact that we are presenting like 4 colors, while in Vietnam they have 5 levels. I think that mismatch also, I think, was in the question, because as it stands now, level 5 implies certain actions. Level 4 implies certain actions. But now if they take the levels that we are presenting, which are 4, does that mean that the current, no, how do you map the actions to the new numbers? I think there was that, and I think you had started touching on that, Gerald, yesterday when you said it's for Vietnam to decide whether they want to still continue keeping the 5 levels or they want to change. It really depends on what the country wants to do. But over and above everything else, the whole idea of having this workshop is that it creates the forum for that discussion to take place. So you are going to have a chance in Vietnam, after the workshop is over, since within the workshop we are going to have a work plan. In the work plan, one thing that is going to be included is creating chances for discussion between the Met Service and the disaster. And that's during that time when this question will be addressed. And then you will decide on what you want to keep. I do not know whether I've answered that question also, but I think now we can take it back to the floor and see whether we have answered your question. Is that okay? Maybe Mr. Vu, you can explain. Oh, the lady who asked the question, is that okay?
Nghe được một số ý, ví dụ như cái ông này ông ấy giải thích thì là cái bảng đấy ấy, của họ thì là nó cũng đưa ra các cấp như của mình, nhưng mà đầu tiên thì nó cũng chỉ là đưa ra những kế hoạch chung thôi, còn nếu mà những kế hoạch chi tiết hơn thì phải đưa về từng cái cấp tỉnh, cấp xã, cấp khu vực thì mọi người sẽ làm chi tiết hơn cái cảnh báo tác động cho từng khu vực cũng như là từng cái loại hình thiên tai mà gây cho cái khu vực cụ thể. Đấy là tức là mỗi một nước thì phải tự làm riêng cho mình. Còn cái cấp cao họ chỉ làm chung chung thôi, còn muốn đi chi tiết thì đi về một cái khu vực của mình, cái địa phương, khu vực riêng, từng địa phương. Chính cái người dân mà sống ở đấy họ mới hiểu được là cái thiên tai đấy tác động đến cái cuộc sống cũng như tài sản của mình ở khu vực đấy nó như thế nào. Thế còn cái cô kia thì cô cũng đã giải thích cái bảng là nó cái Matrices table đấy nó có những con số 1 đến 10 đấy, thì là nó cũng chính là nó có cái tài liệu giải thích rồi đấy, thì là từ 1 thì là cấp nào quyết định, số 2 là cấp nào quyết định, thì mọi người sẽ về tự tìm tài liệu. Số đây là số cấp. Dịch cái phần đấy. Ông này cũng giải thích thêm, ví dụ như là ở Việt Nam mình muốn làm sau này như là các dự báo viên, những người làm dự báo thì cần phải ngồi lại và lên một cái kế hoạch để làm sao chuyển, tức là chuyển những cái kết quả dự báo của mình, tức là truyền đạt những cái thông tin dự báo của mình làm sao đến để tức là truyền đạt cái thông tin dự báo để hướng tới cái dự báo tác động nhiều hơn là cái chỉ là cái dự báo thông tin thời tiết không thôi. Một số những cái ý chí. Okay, we can continue.
Okay. Thank you. Any other question from the floor, please?
Nào có câu hỏi gì nữa không ạ?
Excuse me, can you hear me clearly? Okay, I have a question. So
yes.
back in the risk matrix, we have the line limit and the impact. So I understand that line limit and impact also have four levels from low to high. And I want to know, how do you calculate the risk from the line limit and the impact? Is there any algorithm for that calculation? Thank you.
Ở đây kéo cái mic mình vào, sợ không nghe tiếng.
Anh muốn hỏi tí.
Hỏi lại đi.
Yeah, carry on, please.
Can you ask your question?
I understood the question to mean that the risk matrix has likeliness or uncertainty on one axis and impact on the other axis. And the question was whether there was any algorithm to combine those two variables into one number. Is that one risk number? Is that how I got the question correctly?
Yes.
Thank you. The short answer to your question is no. There is no simple algorithm. Partly because we're dealing here with quite a lot of complexity. Different weather events have different levels of uncertainty. So a tropical cyclone, we can possibly know now 3-4 days in advance exactly how it will move, and generally those predictions are fairly accurate. Something like a thunderstorm is much more uncertain. We don't know even over a period of a couple of hours how that will move or develop. Then you have long-term problem like heavy rains over long periods, or droughts or heat waves, which extend over many days or weeks or maybe even months. So you have that on the hazard side. Each has its own uncertainty, each has its own impact. So there is no simple way of combining all of those variables into one. I think for each individual event, and this is the strength of sitting with the Met Service, the disaster management, all of the people who have specialist technical knowledge, to examine each event and discuss each event individually and try and assess what the preparedness actions should be, and what the likely event will happen, the likely impact, and how that needs to be responded to. So you could see in the example given by Elizabeth with the matrix and the numbers that there is in South Africa, and I think she's correct. I think it's the only country which is quite as structured. There is a very particular set of actions associated with each box on the matrix, at least in the yellow. Actually, I think in France it's something similar, where all of the colors in what they call the vigilance system have very defined actions associated with them. But we know from the global perspective, as the World Meteorological Organization, every country is different, its climate is different, its hazards are different, its culture is different, its organization, government or public service organization is different. So therefore there is no simple one answer to the question you're asking. It's a matter, I'm afraid, for each country, well, not I'm afraid, but I think it's a good thing for each country to work out itself in the conversation between the technical experts and the disaster management experts. So that's as far as I can go, I think.
So you are basically saying that we have to figure it out for ourselves, right?
We can help you with advice, and we can give you examples of other countries, but you know your country best. I would not wish to try and tell you what is best for your country. That would be impossible. We can help you travel along that road of discovery, but you have to travel it yourselves. Yes.
Thank you for the answer.
If I can add something to that, on the question of determining the level of risk, there will be, I think tomorrow, there will be Paul Sarah, another lecturer, who will be showing how a forecast determines how much risk is to be expected. But that is in a generic way. It's as Gerard said, you have to be familiar with your own systems and how to do it yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I understand your point. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
Thì ở đây em Công em vừa hỏi ông ấy về cái cách tính toán cái cách xây dựng cái ma trận, đúng không? Bảng ma trận về cái khả năng xảy ra và cái cấp độ và cái mức độ ảnh hưởng ấy, thì cái cách tính toán như thế nào thì ông ấy có nói rằng là ở đây thì mỗi một cái loại thiên tai nó có cái đặc trưng riêng, cũng như là tức là cái dự báo thời tiết như dự báo hiện tượng thiên tai nó có cái độ gọi là độ không chắc chắn, tức là mình dự báo thôi nhưng mà nó có cái sự bất ổn định, cũng như có cái sai số. Ví dụ như là đối với typhoon thì mình có thể dự được trước 3 ngày, nhưng mà ví dụ đối với dông chẳng hạn thì mình chỉ được trước độ khoảng cùng lắm là mấy giờ thôi chẳng hạn. Đấy, thì mỗi một cái hình thiên tai nó có cái đặc trưng riêng như vậy và mình phải tự đánh giá cái độ không chắc chắn này, cái độ sai số của từng loại hình thiên tai, cũng như là cái khả năng xảy ra trước mấy ngày đấy để mình tự định ra được cái cột ngang đấy, là cái cột likelihood đấy. Cột ngang được rằng cái cột likelihood đấy là mình phải, cái người dự báo viên của mình ấy, mình phải tự đánh giá cái mức độ xảy ra và cái mức độ xảy ra, cái cường độ như thế nào, và cái ví dụ như là một ngày thì nó xảy ra cái xác suất xảy ra bao nhiêu %, nhưng mà trước 3 ngày thì là xảy ra 3%, thì là cái dự báo viên của mình phải tự đánh giá cái việc đấy và cho mỗi loại hình thiên tai riêng. Còn đối với cái mức độ ảnh hưởng thì như nãy đã đề cập là mỗi địa phương mình, những cái cơ quan dự báo đấy phải kết hợp với các đơn cảnh báo rủi ro thiên tai đấy thì tự xác định ra cái mức độ ảnh hưởng thì để mình tính toán cái bảng đấy. Có ai có câu hỏi gì nữa không ạ?
Okay. Anything from the floor? Any question?
I think that's all some question for today. We can keep continue the lecture. If I have question, I will ask later.
Okay. Then Gerard, maybe you might want to take up the cascading hazards.
Okay, this won't take too long because I know you had a session on this morning. I'll just share my screen. Here we go. Yeah. So this, and I know that the text is small here, but I think you worked on this earlier. See if I can make it a little bit bigger. Maybe that's better. Just the idea here is to understand that for every hazard, there are what we call the primary hazards. So the first things that happen when the natural phenomenon occurs, and the natural phenomenon can be a weather thing, like it can be heavy rain, it can be drought, it can be earthquake. So there's immediate impact. But then those impacts lead to what we call secondary impacts. And beyond that, to tertiary impact, third level, maybe fourth level, maybe fifth level. As we're seeing with this coronavirus, we have many, many levels of impact. So take the example of a tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclone arrives, the first impact is heavy rain. Also, but let's take heavy rain. So strong, heavy rains will come, and they will cause floods. The floods will lead to people being out of their houses. So there's a homelessness issue. We have to find homes for people. The floods may lead to the spread of disease. So there's health issues, maybe cholera or other health issues, because there is dirty water, and dirty water carries diseases. The floods may cause crops to fail. And that may be another impact, and it may not be an impact for immediately, but maybe for months later when the crop should be harvested, and now there's no crop and there's less food. So another primary impact of the tropical cyclone might be the storm surge. So you have high level of water on the coast, and that will damage roads, perhaps, or buildings. So if it damages roads, then the transport network is affected, and maybe children cannot get to school, or supplies cannot get to the shops, and so on. So it's about thinking through these different potential impacts, not just the first one, but the second and the third and the fourth, which happen because this cascade, as we call it. One thing leads to another. And again, exactly what the cascade will be depends very much on each local situation. Each city will be different because of the way the coastline is, perhaps, or because it's on a hill or in a valley. Or maybe it's more likely to be flooded or less likely to be flooded. Each household even has a different level of vulnerability. If it's an elderly person living there, or somebody who is handicapped and cannot move very quickly, that's an added problem. Whereas if the household has young people who are fit and able-bodied, and they can perhaps be quite resilient, they can move themselves to a safer place. They can perhaps do the work to bring their house back to a good order after it's been damaged. So there's many different levels of impact, of resilience, and ultimately they will affect what the government needs to do and what the local authorities need to do. So one of the things we studied very much in another country in which I'm working was the different groups who, for one reason or another, maybe don't or cannot respond to disasters themselves. So it might be the elderly, it might be children, people, as I say, who are handicapped, either physically handicapped or mentally handicapped. In some cultures, the women don't have access to radios or telephones because the culture is that the men do that. So the women don't get good information and they can't make decisions. It's very much changes from one culture to the other. So there are all these groups who might be quite vulnerable in ways which have nothing to do with the hazard, but everything to do with their place in society and other aspects. And they all add to the complexity, how complex this situation is when we try to work through the different possible impacts of hazards and how they cascade down through society. So I know you had a session on that this morning, a self-guided session. I'd just be interested from you to know how you found that, whether that was useful, whether you were able to identify some links from primary hazards through to secondary and tertiary, second level, third level, fourth level hazards. And like I mentioned yesterday, this current global pandemic situation is an excellent way of thinking about this, because from the initial hazard, which is a health hazard caused by some mutation of some virus, people get sick, people can die, but then all of the things that has happened in society because of that, the way governments have to react, and I know Vietnam has been very successful in addressing this challenge, much more than most countries in Europe or in America. But it's been at a cost to society. Things have had to change, and that's had impacts on economics, on people's livelihoods, on people's jobs. This is the same in every country now in the world. So it's a good example to think through about how the virus leads to issues with people not being able to travel, and that leads to issues with maybe people in certain industries, hotel industries, airline industries having no work, people being out of jobs, and so on. So this is not just about weather hazards. It's a challenge for every hazard that society faces that comes from the natural world, and that would include viruses and health hazards of that sort. So maybe I should stop there, and it might be something you want to explain or discuss in your own language more easily. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, from the discussion by Gerard, I'd like to know whether there is anything to say from the floor. You had a chance this morning to look at this, plus what Gerard has said. So what is anything to say from the floor? Any questions, any opinions, observations? Maybe you can translate. Yes. Hello. Can somebody translate?
I cannot hear clear. Can you repeat again?
I was saying from the discussions we've had from Gerard, plus the exercises that you did this morning, whether there is any observation or comment from the floor. It's not clear.
Yeah.
There's something wrong. Gerard, I think there's a problem with my connection.
Your sound is a little bit more echoey for some reason, but otherwise I can hear you clearly. I have a question for our colleagues in Vietnam. You have a lot of experience with the tropical cyclones. You've had many already, even in these last 2 months. You've had a very active season. So can you tell us, when you have a tropical cyclone, how long does it take, in your experience, for affected people, affected towns or villages or regions to return to normal? How long does that take? Does it take a few weeks? Does it take a few months? Does it take a year for all of the damage to be fixed, all of the economic damage to be got beyond, and people to resume a normal life? I'm interested to know from your experience, because you have a lot of experience of these unfortunate tropical cyclones events, because this gives us some idea of how resilient the society is in Vietnam. So maybe that's something you can discuss and give us some ideas from your side.
Ông hỏi là mình có rất là nhiều cái kinh nghiệm về cái sự gió bão ấy. Thì bây giờ mọi người có thể nói cho họ biết là cái ảnh hưởng của bão đến con người, rồi đến kinh tế, rồi đến tài sản của cái khu vực bão ảnh hưởng như thế nào, và ảnh hưởng trong bao lâu. Thế thì mình có thể chia sẻ những cái kinh nghiệm đấy để cho họ biết được.
Dự báo hành ngắn đâu, vẫn đâu, nói luôn.
Dự báo của mình có phải ở vùng ảnh hưởng của bão không? Mình lại không phải ảnh hưởng của bão. You want to know about the effect of tropical cyclone in the particular region? Excuse me?
Yes. So from yes, thank you. I can hear you. From your experience, because tropical cyclones probably come into different parts of, maybe some are better than others to recover. Some maybe are poorer areas or wealthy areas, whatever. Maybe some are better organized or poorly organized. I'm just interested in your experience, what you can tell us, because this helps us to understand how these events create impacts in your society.
So I can answer that question. So the resilience to the natural disaster is differ from region to region because in the past, tropical cyclone are more likely to hit the north of Vietnam. But recently, like this year, about eight tropical cyclone hits the south of Vietnam, and because the north are more likely to the north are more likely to receive tropical cyclone. We have better resilience, but in the south they had lower resilience, and in the historic flood back in October, we have more than 100 people die, and the first effect that can be seen from tropical cyclone is the strong wind and flooding. But that's caused and that can be seen immediately. But the crops that are ruined by the storm are like we can see that from 1 or 2 months from the event, and the economic damage that may take years to recover. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really interesting. It shows that even within one country there are different levels of resilience. You say in the north, where historically more storms have happened, it's more resilient. The damage impacts are probably not so great. But in the south, where storms have not historically been so usual, the storms this year have really led to a lot of damage, a lot of death, as you say, a lot of damage to crops, which will have problems further along. So that helps us to understand, and helps hopefully for you to understand how, when we come to this, it's not one solution for everybody, not even one solution for different parts of your country, but different solutions depending on the part of the country and the resilience level, the population level, the wealth of that district, how much resources it has itself, and so on. Thank you. Okay, Sam, I don't know what we want to move on to Elizabeth's talks at this stage, unless you have other things you want to do.
No, I think we can go to Elizabeth, if that's okay. Elizabeth.
Yes, of course. All right. Let me just go back to sharing my screen. Is it clear for everybody?
It's good for me anyway, thank you.
Yes.
All right, great. So what we're going to do now, we are going to work through. Sorry, is someone trying to come in?
I think there's an echo on the side because of the speakers. Perhaps if the mute at the Vietnam end, it would be better.
Okay, that would be great.
Let's mute our speakers. I mean, sorry, our microphones. Let's mute.
All right, so we are going to move into more of a practical session now, where we want to work on the development of an impact table for Vietnam. So what an impact table is an impact table allows forecasters as well as the stakeholders, which in many cases is our disaster managers, to associate the most likely impact level with an area. So we as forecasters and disaster managers want to talk the same language. So if we refer to a medium likelihood of significant impact, then we know what we're talking about when we speak to our colleagues in the different organizations. With the likelihood of the impact to occur, an impact level then determines where on the risk matrix an expected event lies. So we've got the likelihood on your vertical axes and the impact level over here on the horizontal axis, which is determined by the impact table, which is what we want to create today. So impact table is based on stakeholder management and experience. So that's very important. That this is why it's important that we have disaster managers at this workshop to assist us when creating these impact tables. So it's not just the meteorological office that is doing this in isolation. It is, as we've been speaking this whole workshop, throughout this whole workshop, it's all about collaboration, working together with other partners. All right, so different types of risk matrices. So in the WMO 1150, you will see that they use the example given by the UK Met Office, which is very much what we in South Africa started off with, but modified it slightly for our country. As you've heard in today's discussion so far, there's no one solution for every country. So making modifications is perfectly acceptable. So on the difference here between the different matrices, the colors are the same. Certain countries have changed the colors slightly, maybe made another yellow instead of a green. I know Australia has made some modifications to the risk matrix, but basically you keep the same. Countries have generally stuck with the same colors, and the wording is what South Africa has changed, as well as introduced those numbers. So the wording we have changed is on the impact axes. So our disaster managers and forecasters found that calling the impact very low, low, medium, high, as well as the likelihood level also very low, low, medium, and high, they felt it was confusing. So all we changed was kept the likelihood in those different categories, but changed the impact to minimal, minor, significant, and severe. So that's the only thing we changed, as well as the inclusion of the numbers. So the inclusion of the numbers is what I discussed already. So I've got this table that our disaster managers worked with and linked the actions to where we are in the matrix. All right, so basically, an impact table is a table that ranges from nothing significant in the far left-hand side, so what we are going to call minimal, all the way to widespread life-threatening impacts on the far right-hand side, which we in South Africa call severe. So we've got minimal, minor, significant, and severe, and it is cascading impacts from the lowest level to the highest level. The tables are customized per hazard, so you've got an impact table for rain, for wind, for snow, or for whatever hazards your country faces. It could be heat related. Anything like that goes into its own impact table. We have also found that the tables are generalized for the entire country. Maybe in Vietnam, you need to actually change that and make a certain table for the north or a certain table for the south. That is up to you. The impact level depends on the vulnerability in local areas to certain impacts. All right, so here's an example. This is just to generalize what you would have in that first column, which is day-to-day activities are not affected, but we could have small-scale impacts occurring. What you basically have here is business as usual. So some impacts might occur, but it really is nothing major. What we are calling this is minimal impact. And in essence, we don't even send a warning for it. Once we move over to the next level of impact, minor, we've got minor, some local incidents, minor disruptions, but it is still business as usual for our emergency responders. So the emergency responders, be it the ambulance or whoever it is, they still handle this day as business as usual. Once we move to significant, disruption to day-to-day routines and activities, but it's still on a smaller scale. We've got short-term strain on emergency responder organizations. And now if we move to the far right-hand side, severe, we have widespread prolonged disruption to day-to-day routines and activities and prolonged strain on emergency responder organization. So that would be a tropical cyclone, would be widespread. It affects a large part of a country. Prolonged strain, because there's a lot of work that continues to take place and strain on your emergency responders. All right, so this is a generalized version of the impact table. My next slide gives an example of what we in South Africa have done. This is by no means something that Vietnam needs to take or anything like that. When we were developing our impact tables, we found it very beneficial to look at what another country has done, but then modify it. The next slide, I also have one for the UK, what they have done for rainfall. So the UK have got something different, and it would be different. But I've included these two examples so that you can have an idea of what other countries are doing. In the next thing is what I want you to do is develop your own. But before we get onto those instructions, I think it might be best to stop here. I can go into these two impact tables. Otherwise, we can leave it on the screen when we go into the actual group work. But I think if we can wait at this point and see, is there any questions? Do we need to clarify anything? I can go into the details when we finish up this question session. But if somebody could maybe translate for us, if there are any questions, anything I need to explain a little bit more with regards to impact tables.
Có câu hỏi nhiều về cái bảng này không thì họ sẽ giải thích luôn ạ.
Làm sao mà cộng cả cái bảng đó, làm sao mà tính toán khi mà nhiều cái thiên tai phải là không được.
Không, đây là phải dành cho từng thiên tai một anh ạ. Ví dụ như
cái này nó không cái này nó sẽ từng thiên tai một.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Sure.
So with this metric table, can you combine many risks? Is a same table, or each table for each disaster?
So you would have one table per hazard. So one for rainfall, one for strong winds, one for severe thunderstorms. So each hazard will have its own impact table. Does that answer it?
Yes. Tức là mỗi một
Any other questions?
It's okay, we understand. Thì làm năm cái bảng đấy, tức là mình phải làm sẵn không đến lúc mà chỉ đang ra dùng thôi.
Rồi. Cộng lại
cộng trung bình là average hay là có trong số? Mình chỉ nói là
làm
em chưa lái Việt Nam có tăng thiên tai thì bây giờ muốn kết hợp thì làm.
Example, in Vietnam we have a fire disaster and we can combine fire disaster at the same time on the same table.
So if that is what you would like, you could have an impact table for fires. Yes.
how can we create the risk matrix table for multi-hazards?
So would you like to create one impact table for a whole lot of different hazards?
Yep.
Yes, that is the question.
Is that the question? I'm not sure how you would go about something like that. I'm not familiar if another country has done that. I don't know if Sam or you and Gerald, if you would know another country that has done a multi-hazard impact table.
First of all, I think if you can mute your mic in the hall, and then Elizabeth, you can repeat. I don't think your message got through because there was so much echo.
All right, so if I understand the question is that you're asking, could you have one table for a whole wide range of hazards? So maybe have one table for rain as well as wind, as well as fire. From my experience, we have separated the hazards. I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with another country that has made one table for all the hazards. I know what the UK Met Office does do. They do joint warnings. So they might have one warning for wind and rainfall. I can't think offhand what they call that, but they do have joint or combined warnings. But maybe in your your scenario with you dealing with tropical cyclones, you might actually want a tropical cyclone table. As we've mentioned, there's no one singular way that fits every country. It is very much up to you to decide what will work best for your country. Sam and Gerald, I don't know if you have an example of another country that has maybe done an impact table for multi-hazards?
The only thing I can think of, the only example I can think of is probably Australia, which, because of the size of the country, they have a completely different approach. They didn't, I think they have what they call rubrics. But this will be presented by Grace. Grace will be presenting this in this workshop. I don't want to get into it because Grace does it very well, so I think I'd rather leave it to her. But Grace's presentation is already in the program, and there's a link. And what Grace has done, she has made a video. So you can actually go into the video and listen, and you can get those that different approach from Australia, which, because it's a big country, they didn't want to have too many tables, and therefore they have some kind of rubrics. You can see that approach, and then in fact, in one of the self-guided sessions, there's a provision for time for you to go and watch video, and then you can even pose your questions, and then Grace will come and she will do the presentation. Yeah.
Is that understandable? Sorry.
Can somebody translate that? Okay. Sorry, Elizabeth. Maybe somebody can translate that, what I said.
Chị không thể tại vì là thực ra họ không đề cập đến những vấn đề như mình nói ấy.
So we have an example in Vietnam. Example, in the same region we have heavy rainfall. After that, it had flood in the same region. So how can combine in the matrix table like that in that case?
Could you repeat that? Sorry, so you had flood and heavy rainfall.
Yes.
If we have more than one disaster, as an example, heavy rainfall and flood or flash flood happen at the same time, the same area, how can we create the risk matrix for three disaster? We can combine each matrix average, or we need a weight value of each matrix when we combine. That means I want to know how we create the risk matrix for multi-hazard if there happen more than one disaster at the same time, the same areas.
All right, I think that is what Sam is referring to with what Australia have done.
You, the microphone, mute the microphone, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think if that was what Sam was referring to with what Australia have done, and I think maybe once that work has been covered, if there are any questions, Grace would be able to assist with doing the multi-hazard approach for, for one event. I think that would assist with that. Is that all right?
If I could just make a comment here also, it's a very complex problem that you raise, very, very difficult. When things are combined, you can have an effect which is worse than either hazard A or hazard B. If you have two hazards, the combination can be worse than either. So some approaches to that are that you take each hazard separately. So you take wind, rainfall, flooding, high temperature, drought, whatever, and you create a place on the matrix for each of them. So you have different matrix, one for wind, one for rain, one for flood, whatever. And then whichever is the highest of them, that's the color that you use when you're talking to the public. You take the highest risk. But even that, when you take them separately, is probably just a simplification of the real problem, where the different hazards interact to give you something worse than either of them by themselves. And as Sam has explained and Elizabeth has said, Australia have looked at this problem very carefully, and they have a presentation on that later with some ideas about how to approach this. So perhaps it's best to wait to look at that example before we try and make any decision or make any strong recommendation here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Gerald. Is that all right to our colleagues in Vietnam? Is that fine?
Hello, Vietnam. There's a proposal that concerning that question, we also wait, and we'll see the example from Australia. And there's a lecturer, she's called Grace Legg, and she will be doing a presentation that will touch on that question. Is that okay?
Yeah, yes. I think it is okay. We should move on.
We can move on. Okay, thank you. Elizabeth.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so here is an example of what we have done in South Africa. I think we just need to mute the mic in Vietnam. Just to prevent an echo.
Yeah, could you please mute the mic?
Okay. All right, so I'll go through this just very briefly to just give you an idea of an example of what we are currently using in South Africa. So under minimal, which is the lowest level of impact. So of course we are sticking with the 4 levels. As we have said, and you have explained that in Vietnam, you do have the 5 levels. So that is something we need to work, well, you as a country need to work on with your disaster managers to decide what is the best way forward. But here's an example of a 4-level impact table. So under minimal, business as usual, some pooling of water on roads or in settlements, whether they are formal or informal, but generally it's still business as usual. No warning is issued. Day-to-day activities are not disturbed. We've got wet roads and visibility has been reduced, minimal traffic congestion, and isolated incidents of rock falls and mudslides. In certain areas in South Africa, that is a bit of a problem for us. We've got steep edges and we do often have mudslides and rock falls when you have rainfall. But overall, business as usual, no warning sent, and life continues. Under minor, it's still generally business as usual. Now we have some possible localized flooding. However, this flooding is of susceptible areas, so areas that flood frequently. I'm sure in Vietnam you can give me numerous examples of areas that don't need much rainfall but causes flooding. Major roads will be affected but can still be used. We just have an increase of travel times and difficult driving conditions on dirt roads. We have some roads that are not tarred at all, but this could cause some difficult driving conditions. Minor motor vehicle accidents due to slippery roads and reduced visibility, and enclosure of roads crossing low-lying water or low water bridges. So we've got some areas that have some low water bridges, and those roads would then need to be closed. I'm not going to go into all the other points below that. I'm just trying to show you how it builds up. So localized flooding of susceptible roads. Now we move on to significant And no longer is it localized flooding or of susceptible areas. It's now just general flooding. So flooding of roads and settlements, whether they're informal or formal, danger to life, fast-flowing streams or deep water, displacement of affected communities, some communities not accessible or cut off. Now we take that and build on, move to a higher level of impact. In severe, with widespread flooding of roads and settlements, still danger to life, large communities not accessible or cut off, but for a prolonged period, widespread displacement of affected communities. So I think it is clear that you can see the build-up of impacts from minimal or your lowest level all the way through minor, significant into severe. So very much business as usual with pooling of water, and that builds up into widespread flooding, displacement of communities or communities completely cut off for a prolonged period. The next slide shows what the UK have done. So their very low, which is our equivalent to minimal, is a few places will have flooding of low-lying land and susceptible roads. Once again, the word susceptible coming in here, but theirs is already at very low. If we move to low, which was our minor, some flooding of homes and businesses and susceptible roads once again. Some transport routes and travel services affected. When you move to medium or significant, now it's flooding of homes and businesses. So they have also removed the words susceptible out of there. Danger to life, also similar. And if you move to the high, which in our case was severe, widespread flooding of homes and businesses, danger to life, extensive damage, transport routes and travel services disrupted for prolonged periods. So we can clearly see there is that build-up in their rainfall table as well. This rainfall table is available on their website as well, and I've given the link on the left. So what I want to do now is we need to have the large group divided into 4 groups if possible. But in these groups, we would like at least one forecaster in each of the groups. We also would like one disaster manager. If there are any other institutions, I don't think there are at this workshop, we would like them split up as well. I think we've just got some forecasters and some disaster managers here. And then we need one person to be our person that will speak back and give us the information. So we need you to be divided into groups. We'd like a total of 4 groups with at least one forecaster. And then I've got some points for you to consider. It might be best if we actually get into these groups. Is that all right? Can we have everybody divided into 4 groups in the room?
Elizabeth, may I also, do you think it would be good for each group to have somebody from the disaster management?
Yes, so we'd like, yes, so each group must have a forecaster and a disaster manager, at least one.
Yeah.
We already have 4 groups that has forecaster and people from disaster management.
Excellent. Okay, so if you're in your groups already, can we maybe mute there again? Okay, so we need to think about some main points. So what real life situations or example can you think of where an impact occurred? What recent tropical cyclone? Think back to what's recently happened and what impact would you say that was? When this recent tropical cyclone occurred, would it be a minimal, minor, significant, or severe? When thinking about the impact, we need to think about the bigger picture. We often focus on one individual, and that is easy to do. It's easy to just get caught up with how the individual feels if one household is affected. But we need to look at the bigger scale. So what would be minimal? Is it just if a susceptible area was affected, or is it widespread? Or how do you go about dividing the different impacts into that impact table? Also think about what resources were needed to assist afterwards. This is also something we are looking at the bigger picture in terms of the general public. So not sector specific. So don't go into what the energy sector is, how will the energy sector be affected? It's more for the general public as a whole. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have. We have already. We understand.
All right. So the instructions now. What I would like you to do is in your different groups, think about what different impacts would be under minor, what under minimal, what impacts would be minor, what would be significant, what would be severe. You can either type this up or you can write it out on a piece of paper, and after a few minutes we will ask you to report back and give us some feedback. So just to repeat, you need to decide what would be a minimal impact for rainfall, what would be minor, what would be significant, and what would be severe. So just divide those different impact levels into each of these columns, thinking about recent events, think about what flooding occurred, how large, what was the scale of that flooding, and how would you divide that into the different impact levels. So as I said, you can either type this up into a table if you've got a laptop per group, or you can just write it out, but we do need that feedback. Are the instructions clear?
Yes, we're clear. So how many minutes do I have to finish Scott?
Okay, we can give 15 minutes to start off with, and we can see how far you are after 15 minutes.
Ok. Thì bây giờ lớp mình sẽ chia làm 4 nhóm như là trong sách lớp học ấy. Thì mỗi nhóm sẽ chọn một loại hình thiên tai để mình đánh giá xem là cái tác động cũng như là tức là chia theo cái bảng hướng dẫn đấy. Xem là như thế nào thì là ảnh hưởng ít nhiều và cái mức độ ảnh hưởng cao nhất là như thế nào, thì mỗi nhóm tự đánh giá xem nó sẽ có cái báo cáo.
Would you like me to keep that blank table up?
Chị Hương ơi, chị lên đây ngồi đây. Ăn là lên trên đây. Lên trên em ạ.
Anh Phương với đây. Chỉ gọi nhìn thấy ba đồng ra đồng chí hoặc hai đồng chí ở đây đâu nhận tiền. Tiền nhóm 4 mà.
Excuse me, Elizabeth.
Yes.
Can you show me the exercise?
Would you like the instructions?
Yes. Can you show me instruction for your exercise?
Sure.
Chị với bạn này xem Chị cái bạn này là anh Hải.
All right, are you able to see the instructions?
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Email this to you if it will be easier.
Yes.
Should I send?
Yes, I see. Thank you.
Is everybody managing over there? Are you coming up with things in the impact table?
We just start for discussion for each group. So I think after 20 to 30 minutes, maybe we can finish.
All right. Okay, so you have started discussions.
Yeah.
Is everything still going well there? Looks like everybody is working. It looks like everybody is still busy. Are any of the groups finished at all with an impact table for rainfall?
Our group have not finished yet. Can you wait a minute?
15 minutes.
Yes, sure. No problem. All right. Can we have some feedback? Are we ready for some feedback to be given? Have we got some content in the impact table for rainfall at all? We would like to have some feedback, and then we're going to take a break after that and then continue. So are the participants in Vietnam ready for some feedback?
We are still working on our assignment, and maybe after the break we will continue our work.
Okay, so would you like a break and then?
Yeah, maybe 20-minute break, I think.
Sam?
Okay, we can start. Start hay là mọi người
Mọi người nghỉ.
Đang nghỉ break.
Em vừa mới xin break xong.
Yeah, they can have a break.
Đi xong rồi là báo cáo. Nhanh, đến được không ạ? Để mỗi người mất 15 phút là 4 nhóm mất 60 phút rồi thì là đúng là 5 giờ đấy. Okay, we can start now.
Yeah, so I didn't get it.
I'm not.
So group 1 we start
Starting with some feedback, it seems.
Yeah. Okay.
I see like they're walking out. Sam. Okay.
My group discussed about inundation.
Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We discussed about the road is slick and slope, and congestion of the some road in the city. The traffic congestion on the large scale, and some people get slide flooded, and that will affect crop, and some outside activity will cannot achieve, and some people can go out when the flood, and significant some resident area will inundation, and some power down, and some road be flow. Yeah. Severe cow damage for people, life or property, and cow. So people will advocate for grant for the inundation and water pollution and water will occur. That one we have.
All right, excellent. Thank you, group.
Yeah.
Can we move to group 2?
Group 2 ạ. Group 3 đi ạ.
Hello.
Rồi xong rồi.
What's some minutes?
Okay.
Ông group 2 rồi gì ạ?
And my group is heavy red. Heavy red is minimal, use visible small scale. Some pulling water and minor in slippery road to driving, minor impact to agricultural accident, or structural school hobbies. Significant is heavy cars flooding, some community temporarily not accessible or cut out. Heavy damage property and cause danger of animal and cause landslide. Severe heavy rain is danger to life and animals. Charles High Hospital widespread flooding and cause much community temporarily not accessible or cut off. Affected to medical environment and damage property and structure and heavy rain cause pandemic. That one is my group.
All right, thank you. I was able to hear. Elements of it. If I can just ask that maybe when someone is talking, if the others can try to be as quiet as possible so we can hear a bit better, if that's all right. Can we have group 3?
Chưa. Free của nhóm 3 mà.
Nhóm nào cũng được, miễn là nhóm thứ 3. Chị cứ nói chị nấu ra, chị luôn cho xong.
We are group 4 and we want to introduce about impact level for flood in mountainous areas in Vietnam. Mostly this flood event often impacts a significant and service level. But now we have a small lesson, so we divide 4 levels. At the minimum level, normally flood have a small impact. It maybe sometimes make the day-to-day activity disturb. For example, wet roads make we have difficulty when we travel on the road. In some flood event, flooding some low-lying area will be flooding in short time. The next level is minor impact. Maybe some localized disruption of access to drinking water or damaged crops. The second impact is flooding of various areas or roads or low-lying areas will be flooded. Localized, the top impact is localized and short-term disruption. And the last one is landslide. Often happen with flash flood. Often happen with landslide or rockfall or soil erosion. And the third impact is the significant. With flash flood event, as I mentioned the first time, often flash flood events often happen with significant and severe impact, which is the level significant flood damage to life, damage property, infrastructure, loss of livelihood or livestock. The second impact is localized disruption due to drainage system. Some communities, example remote areas, are temporarily isolated. Major disruption traffic flow due to major roads being destroyed, or damaged road, dry dams, or reservoir or hydropower reservoirs will be damaged too. The next impact is disruption to essential service, water, electricity, pumps, school, etc. Landslide and soil erosion will be happening in the flash flood event. And the last one is the isolated incidence of communicable disease. The last impact is service level. Flash flood impact is make a loss of danger of life, damage property, infrastructure, loss of livelihood and livestock. The next impact is last communities not accessible for a prolonged period. The next impact is widespread displacement of affected communities. The fourth impact is widespread damage to property, buildings, or loss of livelihood or livestock. Moreover, widespread transport route, travel service, on major roads, rise or dam of hydropower may be damaged too in big flash flood event. And I think the last impact is the most dangerous is the flash flood impact will be damaged. Will happen combined with landslide or mudslide, make the soil erosion, and for a long time, people have very difficult when they in the next year when they make farm in next season. That's all for our group.
Excellent. I think there's some valuable impacts into that impact. So all three groups so far have really done a great job. As far as I understand, group 3 still needs to get some feedback. Is that right?
Could you mute, please? Mute your mic. VietNam.
All right, so as far as I understand, it's just group 3 that needs to provide their feedback. Is that correct?
And this Matrices tools.
Em ơi, có cái mic kìa. Nó từ từ kéo, từ kéo lấy cầm mic em, kéo dây hỏng dây, đứt dây.
Matrices tools
We study on storms. Every year, storm usually occurs from May to October in Vietnam, and its effect in the center of Vietnam and the north of Vietnam. Storms cause 4 levels. The first level is called traffic jam and affect the liver of humans. The next level is called flooding and destroys crops. And when the storm affects significance, that is strong wind and cause heavy rains, and they cause storms damage to infrastructure and properties such as hospitals, schools, supermarkets, and affect the traffic roads. When the storm affects suburbs, it's got many other hazards such as strong wind, rainy event, heavy floods, landslide, storm surge, and they destroy the infrastructure and properties serious. And it's in fact many people storm is several hazards and finish.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much for everybody's contributions to these impact tables. If I could please request that we get these on email so that we can also keep a record of the impact tables. I think if we ask you, I'm sure you would probably want more time spent on them, and that is probably needed. I think when we work with Sam and the last day, when we put together a work plan, you'll see that you would need some more time, but I think you've really got a good idea of what is expected and what should go in these impact tables. So I really think it is commendable in the effort that you've put into this impact table thus far. But if we could please have a copy. Sam, I don't know who the contact person is that these could be emailed to, but I think it would help us if we had a copy of these impact tables, if that's all right.
That's an excellent idea, Elizabeth. Yes. It would be very good to have copies of these impact tables. Please send them to us, to myself, to Grace, of course, and to Rose. And copy Gerald. That would be great. Okay.
All right. And I think we can take a break now, Sam. Is that all right?
That's all right. Yes. That's all right.
I see time is running out.
Yeah. Now we were supposed to have 60 minutes for the next session. Elizabeth, is there any chance of making it shorter?
Yes, we can shorten it.
So if we go for 10:50, is 15 minutes too much? Can we come back at past? Then we have 30 minutes.
Yes, I think that is fine, if that's all right with the participants in Vietnam. So a 10-minute break.
Actually, it's exactly 12 minutes. So 12 minutes, come back at past, then we have 30 minutes with Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your break.
Thank you, Sam and Elizabeth.
Thank you, Lam. Good to see you.
I just, sorry to a bit busy today. I have another meeting.
Yeah.
So I just wonder about the impact table, because actually in Vietnam we already have our current 5 warning level system. So it's go from 1 to 5, and we also have kind of definition to the what is the expected impact for different levels. For example, for level 1 and 2, it's just a local impact. For commune level or even small, a little bit bigger, like provincial level, that's for level 1 and 2. It's normally happen with small scale disaster, a hazard like hailstorm or thunderstorm. So that's mainly just go, or fogs, it's mainly just go to level 1 and level 2, which is we call the local impact. But for larger scale, like heavy rain, especially tropical storm, we can have level 5, 4, and 5, 3, 4, and 5. So it means when level 3, it can be in many province impact. So in that case, we will need a national committee, national steering committee to join and give the direction to what we should do to cope with the situation like tropical storm. When we have level 4, it means we need a deputy prime minister or prime minister to chair that national steering committee. And at that time, we need more, how to say, more stakeholders to join to the activity that we prepare for the typhoon coming. So I just wonder if what is Elizabeth tell people doing about the impact table is similar to what to describe the situation that we can face with different levels. Because I see in the impact table, you can have a minimal impact. We can have like just a daily routine. It means that the thunderstorm just happened in a short scale or in very quick time, or fogs, or like hot spell. Then it's kind of like not affected too much to our daily routine. But then when we have a heavy rain or flash flood or tropical storm, so we need to address with a higher level management. So if that's the case, we are preparing the impact table, because I just wondering if that's the case, maybe I need to give you kind of like review what we are having at in Vietnam now. What we are 5 levels of warning, what we are organizing our activity whenever we have a storm or whenever we have a heavy rain. So is that the one we are moving toward with the impact table?
Yes, so it was mentioned earlier today that you've got those 5 levels. And we see, you know, every country approaches this differently. So Sam, you must jump in here, and I'm not too sure if Gerald is around. His camera is off, but if you're around, Gerald, please jump in here as well. That what we were discussing earlier today is that every country will approach it slightly differently. So if you are finding that the 5 levels work very well for Vietnam, hi Gerald, then that is something. If you and the disaster managers work well, having those different 5 levels, then you must find a way in which that can continue to work well. This isn't something that it needs to be set in stone that you have to have these 4 levels. We're just trying to use what other countries are using and just try show or demonstrate what is working elsewhere. I'm not too sure how we would change the matrix table to have 5 different levels. Gerald, I don't know if you've got any ideas how the matrix table could work with 5 different impact levels?
Thanks, Elizabeth. I think the first thing to think about is whether at the moment it's a 4x4 matrix, effectively 4 levels of impact, 4 levels of uncertainty, and then mapped onto that 4 overall levels of risk, I suppose, going from green to yellow to orange to red. So to go to 5, and the Germans use 5, so other countries do use 5. Some countries use only 3, but certainly there's good experience in using 5 in some countries. Do you want to go for 5 levels of impact and 5 levels of uncertainty, or 5 levels of impact and 4 levels of uncertainty? You can construct the table with different numbers in the X and the Y directions. That's something which you have to think about first, and then think about the how, given your existing 5 levels, which you should keep because that's what you've been using and that's what your people are familiar with. Think about where they fit best in that context of impact and uncertainty. And it is an important point then, and it was briefly discussed earlier, about how those 5 levels then get associated with different sets of actions at different levels, from the local to the district to the regional to the national. Obviously, the highest level will typically be national. It's usually a good policy that it should be the smallest possible level that can deal successfully with the event that should deal with it. It should not get bigger than the smallest. So if a district, if an event is such that a district level can cope with it adequately, then the district level should be allowed to cope with it. There's no need to bring in a national level because it's overkill. It's too much. If it's just, as you say, a thunderstorm or something, it's a city authority or something like that that can deal with that. It's just some localized flooding or whatever. So it's important to have that scaling of the size or the level of the hazard with the level of the response, and to get those matched up. But that again will depend on the structure of emergency management and response in your country. I hope that helps.
If I may add 2 points, just 2 points. To your response, and these are very good responses. Just to add one thing, I see from the comments I've noticed, because this was even from yesterday, I think there's a feeling that this mapping what we are talking about, the 4 levels onto 5, might cause harm. The whole idea is whatever you do in implementing impact-based forecasting should not cause any harm to what you are already doing. And if you want to sustain the 5 levels, I think that's a good idea. On how to do it, this is my second point, Gerald. Gerald, would you be able to get an example of the German German table? And if you are able to do that, maybe we can share it and just have a look at it and see how it might look like.
Okay, I'll contact some of my German colleagues and see if I can do that. We won't have it obviously for today, but have it for later in the week.
No. Okay. Thank you very much. Maybe we can have 2 minutes break now. I don't know how long we will make the break now.
1 minute.
I'll leave that to you now. How long do you want to make it?
For me, I don't need.
No, for them, for the, or whoever, the coordinator in the hall.
Các anh chị ở lớp có cần nghỉ giải lao nữa không ạ? Hay là chúng ta học tiếp luôn ạ?
10 minutes, and then you come back, and then probably we can overrun by 10 minutes.
Cả lớp học tiếp luôn ạ.
So they said we can start straight away.
Start straight away? Okay, very well. I'll leave that to you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
All right, excellent. So what we're going to do now, and I'm glad Lam, you back, because I think we might need a bit of help with interpreting. My Vietnamese is non-existent. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my next presentation. Let me just get that going. And it's going to be a very interactive session. So what we are trying to demonstrate here is, let's just see, oh, it won't work. It's not wanting to share for some reason. Okay, let me try it again. Let's just open it again. What we're trying to do here is demonstrate how we can identify certain vulnerability levels in a community. So what I've got is a fictional case. For some reason, my laptop has never done this, but I cannot share my presentation. I'm just going to close it. I do apologize. Let me close and open it up.
Want to break?
Yeah, my laptop wants a break. I sincerely apologize. Let's try again.
Bây giờ cô ấy đang muốn đưa ra một cái ví dụ về một trường hợp giả định.
It just will not let me share it.
Maybe, Elizabeth, maybe I can also try to open it, see whether I can share it.
If you can, that will
Let me try. I'll just try. I don't know whether I will be able to.
It just won't let me do it today. I'm not too sure why not. Giving me an error saying I don't have access to my own presentation. So
my goodness.
Which makes no sense, of course.
This is the one for vulnerability and exposure. Is that
yes.
it?
Yes.
Let me see whether I can be able to open it. How do you do this? I can also. Okay, then let me try to get it from the email. I can't open it from the website.
I have it open here.
So okay, please share it. Yeah, okay, okay.
Can you all see it now?
I can't see it yet on my side.
Oh.
That's it.
You got it?
Yes, I see it there. Thank you. Can you go to the second slide for us? All right, so what this is, and I'm going to try and go through it slowly, and then if you can maybe translate for us, just to make sure everybody understands what we're trying to do. So what we've got is, we've got an area. It's a fictional area. It's an area that we've just made up, so it doesn't exist, but we're just trying to demonstrate something here. So at the top of the screen, we've got a formal settlement. In the middle, we've got an informal settlement, and part of this informal settlement is within a floodplain. The blue river there, that blue line, is a bit of an estuary into the sea, and the dotted line is showing our floodplain. Area C, in the bottom left-hand side, is a city. All right, so is everybody clear on my fictional area that I've created? Is it understandable?
Trước đây là một cái trường hợp mà giả định mà cô đưa ra, thì đây là một cái khu dân cư, thì trong đấy có cái khu A, khu B và khu C. Thì trong đấy khu B là có một phần là nằm trọn trong cái floodplain, tức là cái khu vực mà thường bị ngập lụt. Thì trong khi đó khu A thì ở xa, còn bên khu C này thì là cái khu vực thành phố. Thì đây là một cái giả định về một cái lưu vực sông như thế này. Yes, you can continue, Elizabeth.
All right, thank you. If you can go to the next slide, please. So here I have something that I want to ask you. So we've got the three areas, A, B, and C, and when we go to the next slide, we'll see which one is which again. But I want you to tell me, of those three areas, which area would you be worried about the most? Which area is the most vulnerable? Which area is the least vulnerable? And which one is in between? Let's not do question 2 yet. So let's just say what area, and from the groups there, we just want some volunteers. Tell me which area is the most vulnerable, and then which is the least, and which one is in the middle. So if you can go to the next slide, please, and that will show us those three areas. Yes, so can we have some volunteers to tell me which area would be the most vulnerable to rainfall, least, and which one is in the middle?
Đây câu hỏi đây là có ba cái khu vực dân cư như thế, thì các anh chị ai tình nguyện, ai xung phong trả lời là khu vực nào mà có rủi ro lớn nhất, rủi ro ít nhất, và khu vực nào là rủi ro trung bình.
Be vulnerable.
So which is the most vulnerable?
Khu vực nào rủi ro lớn nhất ạ?
Be more vulnerable. C
and why?
Yeah.
Tại sao B là khu vực mà rủi ro lớn nhất, và tại sao?
Because very close with the flood area across the river, very near river.
Yes, excellent. Right, so it's close to a river makes it more vulnerable. Which area is the least vulnerable then?
Khu vực nào là khu vực mà ít rủi ro nhất?
C.
And why would you say that?
Sao lại C ạ?
C because this is far from sea and far from river.
Excellent. Would you say A is then in between?
Can you repeat your question, Elizabeth?
What level of or vulnerability would A be?
Đối với khu vực A thì các anh chị đánh giá là ở mức độ nào? Medium.
All right, so in between the two levels. All right. As a forecaster, you've got forecasters in the room. Which area would you be most concerned about?
Và câu hỏi dành cho các anh chị dự báo viên thì đối với cả khu vực ba khu vực ABC này thì khu vực nào là các anh chị quan tâm nhất, lưu ý nhất?
C.
Would you be most concerned about C?
Yes.
Why would you be the most concerned about C?
Tại sao lại quan tâm nhất đến khu vực C?
City population very high density, and also many people will affect it.
All right, so it's the least vulnerable, in your opinion, but it's the most that you'd be concerned about. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please, Lam? Yes, all right, so now we've got a forecast. I'm telling you that we are expecting 300 millimeters in 24 hours across that whole region. Now, I want you to tell me, would you expect minimal, minor, significant? I know you've got 5 levels, but if we can just stick to these 4 for these illustrative purposes, which level would you think each of those areas would be with regards to impacts if we're expecting 300 millimeters in 24 hours? So we can go on to the next slide, which shows the area.
Và câu hỏi đây thì là tức là giả sử chúng ta có cái lượng mưa dự báo là 300 mm trong vòng 24 giờ trên toàn cái khu vực này. Thì câu hỏi đặt ra là các anh chị sẽ sử dụng ở đây là 4 cái cấp tác động, mà mặc dù Việt Nam mình là 5 nhưng mà trong các cái ví dụ này là lấy là 4 cấp. Thì các anh chị sẽ xếp các cái khu vực A, B, C là theo các cái cấp tác động như thế nào? Gồm có minimal, minor, significant và severe. Cái này là tính đến cái tác động.
So if you can tell me area A, would you think of minimal impacts, minor, significant, or severe? The same for B. Is it minimal, minor, significant, severe? And C, the same thing if we're expecting 300 millimeters of rain. So we can just have volunteers from around the group. Maybe somebody from 1 can tell us what impact would you expect for area A, which is the informal settlement, well, the formal settlement, sorry.
Và cô yêu cầu nhóm 1 cử ra một đại diện để xem là ví dụ đối với khu vực A kia thì là rủi ro ở mức nào, các 4 cái mức đấy: minimal, minor, significant và severe. Nhóm 1 ạ.
Okay, group 1, within the I area and C area is significant, and also B is severe.
B severe.
Yes.
A significant.
A and C. C significant also. C.
Yeah. Significant also.
Yeah.
Great. Any other group have something different?
Có anh chị nào có quan điểm khác không ạ?
Group 2, what do you think?
Nhóm 2 đi ạ.
I think A is a minor and B and C is a significant.
B and C.
So A minor and B and C significant.
Yeah, it's my opinion.
Okay, great. Anyone from group 3?
Nhóm 3.
Nhóm 3. Nhóm 3 rồi. No idea.
Group 4, does anybody have an idea in group 4?
Group 4.
Nhóm 4 đi ạ.
Excuse me, can I have a question? So what is the brown line in picture? Yes,
Which one?
the brown line.
Which one?
Yes.
So he wonder what this line means.
That's a bridge.
Cái cầu ạ, cái bridge, cái cầu đấy ạ.
And what is the long line that connect settlement A and city? Yeah, that's line.
Those are roads.
Road.
Sorry, I should have explained that.
Yeah, so I think B is significant because they are prone to, they are susceptible to flooding. A is minor, and C is minimal because they has a city and good drainage system. That's
Okay.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for the contributions. If we can go to the next slide. I think we just need to mute the Bluetooth mic. There we go. If we can please go to the next slide, because I want to introduce the discussion now. There we go. So if each of the groups, even we just had the 3 groups responding, you all identified different impact levels for the different regions. Some of them, maybe 2 of the areas had the same impact level. Maybe A and C had the same impact level, but then B was a different impact level. And that's fine because they are different vulnerabilities. But now, as a forecaster and as a disaster manager, we need to warn for the whole area. We cannot issue warnings for small little snippet of areas, for this little community and a different warning for that community. So what we need to do now is issue one warning, but for the entire area. So you need to decide what impact level would you give to this entire area. Are you going to go for the worst case scenario, meaning the higher impact level? So a lot of the groups, or I think all the groups, chose B as a higher impact level than the rest of the area. So you can either go for a higher impact level for the entire area, which makes it a worst case scenario, or you could go for a lower impact level, which is the most likely situation for the entire area, but then point out that informal settlement B would have higher impacts. Lam, if you can just explain that in Vietnamese, I'd appreciate it.
Câu hỏi đặt ra bây giờ là cho các dự báo viên, tức là chúng ta vừa đánh giá được 3 khu vực thì mỗi một nhóm có một quan điểm khác nhau rồi. Đấy, nhưng mà có một cái chung nhất thì là tất cả các nhóm đều chọn B là cái khu vực mà có rủi ro lớn nhất. Thế thì bây giờ cái vấn đề đặt ra cho dự báo viên là chúng ta phải đưa ra một cái cảnh báo, dự báo viên và những người làm phòng chống thiên tai là chúng ta phải đưa ra một cảnh báo chung cho cả khu vực, chứ chúng ta không thể làm cho từng khu vực nhỏ được. Đấy, cho nên là nếu mà các anh chị phải ra một cái cảnh báo chung cho toàn bộ khu vực, đấy, với các cái mức độ rủi ro khác nhau như thế, thì các anh chị sẽ chọn phương án nào? Đấy, có thể phương án là gì, các anh chị chọn cái xấu nhất, tức là đưa cảnh báo xấu nhất, tức là cái khu vực mà đưa ra cái cảnh báo rủi ro cao nhất cho toàn bộ khu vực, hay là các anh chị đi theo cái hướng là đưa ra cái cảnh báo rủi ro ở mức thấp nhất, tức là ví dụ như ở trong hình này thì cái khu vực nào mà ít rủi ro nhất thì anh chị cảnh báo theo cái mức độ đấy thôi. Đấy, thì câu hỏi đặt ra là như thế, tức là chúng ta phải lựa chọn cái việc là quyết định cái cảnh báo chung cho toàn bộ khu vực này thì chúng ta sẽ cảnh báo ở cái mức độ nào. 4 cái mức độ nó vẫn như thế này. Đấy. Minimal, minor, significant và severe thì các anh chị nếu mà cảnh báo cho toàn bộ khu vực thì chúng ta sẽ cảnh báo như thế nào? Turn on your mic, please.
Sorry, I'm asking, is it clear now that we need the group to decide on one impact level for the entire area? What would they decide on?
Khi mà các anh chị phải chọn một cái warning level cho toàn bộ khu vực thì các anh chị sẽ chọn theo phương án nào? Từng nhóm một ạ.
Group one is significant.
Was that your highest impact level previously?
Anh nhóm 1 chọn significant thì có phải đấy là cái mức mà cao nhất trong tức là 3 khu vực đúng không ạ? ABT thì có cái mức significant là mức cao nhất đúng không ạ?
Right.
Yes, so they go for the highest one.
Okay, excellent. Group 2?
Nói lại đi em.
The same idea.
Significant, same idea with group
Same
one.
idea.
Yeah.
Great. Does group 3 have an answer this time?
Bye.
Same idea.
Same idea. Yeah.
Okay, in group 4?
Same.
The same.
The same.
Right. So we
Highest impact.
Highest impact. Excellent. All right, is it clear then that what we're trying to show here is that for this area, it's just a fictional area, but what you guys have been able to identify is firstly different levels of vulnerability for certain areas within one region, but also you have been able to establish with very little information different impact levels and then give a forecast of an impact level for the entire area as a whole, which is very great. It really is showing that you're understanding the different vulnerabilities that you can get, but also what you have done now is being able to decide on an impact level, which the group as a whole has decided to go really with the worst case. Even though you know that area A and C are less vulnerable, you have decided to go with the worst case, probably to get the better response from emergency managers or whatever the case is in a real life situation. So I think you've been very successful in doing this, and I hope that this simple illustration has made you realize a different way of thinking and just to see a different area that is completely fictional. Hopefully you can relate to it in some aspect in Vietnam.
Yes. Tức là cô nói là rất là cảm ơn các nhóm đã có cái trả lời và đều chung một cái ý tưởng, tức là chúng ta đều đi theo cái hướng là cảnh báo mức độ rủi ro ở cái mức cao nhất cho cả khu vực rộng khi mà chúng ta có các cái nhóm chịu rủi ro ở mức khác nhau. Thì đấy cũng là một cái mà nguyên tắc chung, và với cái mong muốn là gì là chúng ta sẽ đưa ra cái mức cảnh báo cao nhất để các cái lực lượng mà phản ứng nhanh ý, ví dụ cảnh sát hay là phòng chống chữa cháy chẳng hạn, vân vân, thì là chúng ta sẽ có cái chuẩn bị ở cái mức cao nhất để ứng phó với cả thiên tai. Và cô thấy là với cái kết luận và cái lựa chọn của các nhóm như thế thì thấy rằng là mọi người đều nắm được cái nguyên tắc chung như thế. Yes, you can continue.
All right, I just wanted to know if there were any questions from the group at all. There is another case, but I think because of our time, Sam, you can jump in to give some guidance. It was just another illustration, just a different example. So Sam, if you would like us to work through that, we can, but due to time, we can also finish it here and leave just some time now for questions.
Yeah, because it looks like we have only 7 minutes. So maybe we can go for questions. Yeah. Okay.
Any questions from the floor?
Tức là cô còn một cái ví dụ nữa thì cô vừa hỏi ý kiến là có ông San có ý kiến hay không, thì ông bảo chúng ta tiếp tục. Thì các anh chị đến đây có câu hỏi gì không ạ? the no question. You can keep going.
All right, Sam, there's no questions on the floor at all.
Yeah.
Should we wrap up for the day, or what is your suggestion?
How long would the other one take?
The same amount of time. It's just a different, it just depends how much talking takes place, but we can work through it. Should we go through it?
Yeah, maybe we can give it a go and then we see what happens.
Sure.
Yeah,
all right,
okay.
So let's go to the next few slides. All right, and the next one, there we go. So what we've got now is a similar situation, but 3 new areas. So far left-hand side is the sea, and then we've got that brownish color is the beach, yes. So that is my version of the beach. So we've got sand, then we've got a river, the blue line from the sea, yes, that's a river going all the way. Then there's the floodplain, which is the dotted blue line. Yes, there we go. And that is around settlement A. Right at the top is settlement A. Then half of the floodplain also goes over B, which is the school. Do you see the school? There we go. Yes, that's the school. That dark black line running from the top straight down to the bottom is a main road. So there's a main road, is that thick line? Yes. With the small little black lines, just smaller roads. So secondary roads, yes. With a bridge. Yeah, there we go. That's the bridge. And there's another bridge leading to the school over the main road. Yes. The third settlement is a farm right at the bottom. So I've got a farmer there who's busy with some crops. Do you want to maybe explain the scenario?
Yes. Thì đây là cái giả thiết tiếp theo, thì ở khu vực dân cư đây chúng ta có biển này, bãi biển. Cái khu vực A đây thì gồm có làng mạc, sông là cái đường màu xanh đây, và đường cái là đường lớn là đường màu đen đây, và các cái đường nhỏ hơn thì có các cây cầu. Thì sau đó đến khu vực trường học là khu vực B, thì một nửa của trường học là nằm trong cái floodplain này. Thì còn ở khu vực phía dưới là cái khu vực farm. Đấy, thì cũng nằm ở phía cạnh đường cái ở đây, và xa hơn ở phía nam, ở về phía dưới ở đây. Yes, you can keep going.
Can we go to the next slide, please? So now I'm telling you, we are expecting 350 millimeters of rain in 24 hours across, so the whole region. 60 millimeters of that rainfall is expected within 1 hour. So it's quite a heavy downpour. The river, which we saw, is already at bank full. So the river is already full. What I'm asking you is what level of impact would each area, A, B, and C, fall into? So we've got a lot of rain expected. 60 mils is expected within 1 hour. Your river is already full. And if we can just give every area assigned an impact level.
Vâng, và cái giả thiết bây giờ là gì, là chúng ta có dự báo là 24 giờ thì có lượng mưa là 350 mm. Trong đó thì có thể có cái mưa 60 mm trong vòng 1 giờ. Và cái điều kiện thứ hai là mực nước ở sông ấy, là cái khu vực màu xanh đây, mực nước ở sông là đầy. Đấy, thì với cái giả thiết như thế thì câu hỏi đặt ra cho các nhóm là chúng ta sẽ gán các khu vực A, B, C ở các cái mức ảnh hưởng như thế nào. A là khu vực dân cư đây, và B là trường học, C là khu vực trang trại đây.
So you can discuss in the groups what would the different impacts be, what impact level would we assign to A, what would we assign to B, and what would we assign to C.
Các chị thảo luận theo nhóm để quyết định cái mức cái ảnh hưởng cho các cái khu vực A, B, C. Nhóm nào xong thì có thể xung phong trả lời ạ.
Any volunteers?
Có ai xung phong không?
A, B, B là
Okay. Group 1. A and B is significant. C minor.
Okay. Group 1 A and B significant, C minor. Group 2.
B.
Nhóm 2 ạ.
Group 3.
I couldn't hear group 2. Could you maybe repeat it for me?
Nhóm 2 anh nhắc lại không nghe không rõ luôn.
Nhóm 2 ạ?
Dạ nhóm 2 đâu.
A is severe, B and C is significant. It's
All right, so A is severe, B and C you've kept the same at significant.
yeah.
Group 3.
Nhóm 3 đi ạ.
That's it.
Nhóm 4 xong chưa?
I think in this picture we define two area effects. A area is severe, and B and C is significant.
B and C is significant.
All right, so same as group 2.
That comes from group 4.
Group 4.
Còn nhóm 3 đi ạ.
All right, so as every
Same group. 4.
that was group 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
The same. Wow.
Oh, same for group 4. All right. Okay, so we've generally got that area A is severe and then B and C have been kept the same, which is quite interesting. I don't know if one of the groups maybe want to explain why they've gone for the same impact level for B as well as C. Can you maybe explain? One of the groups want to volunteer?
Nhóm 4 thì cô có nói là rất là thú vị là bởi vì nhóm 4 đã xác định là cái B và C là hai khu vực có cùng cái cấp độ rủi ro, thì cô rất muốn nghe ý kiến từ nhóm 4 ạ.
B and C is the same level impact, because I think although B area near plug plane and C is more far from plug plane, but C is in this picture is fun. When a disaster happened, a lot of crops will be destroyed, and I think this may cause damage a lot, affect from damage damage to human activity. And B is although small error near floodplain, but in this picture, this area is school, and where we a lot of children study here, and children is the group. I mean, that group people is very easy, which who is easy impact of disaster. So that's we choose B and C are the same level impact.
All right, thank you for explaining that, and I think it makes sense. So what you're saying is that a school is more vulnerable because you've got small children, you've got children going there, it's a group of people there, so making it more vulnerable. And C, from your experience, when a farm is affected, the plants could be completely destroyed, if I understood that correctly. And those are valid discussions. Lam, did you think I understood that correctly?
Chị Phương có hỏi là vừa rồi có phải là mình nói rằng là do học là có học sinh là một, là còn cái khu mà trang trại thì là nếu mà ngập thì là hỏng hết các cái lương thực thực phẩm và cây cối đấy, có đúng không ạ? Yes, you understand correctly.
Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so what we need to do now is similar to that previous case. You need to tell me, so we've got different impact levels for the region. Now we need to choose one impact level for the entire region. So what impact level would you choose? Would you go for the worst one? Everybody had a higher impact level for the settlement that's right there in the floodplain. Would you choose that impact level for the entire region? Or would you go for the lower one, so maybe only significant, but then mention area B, area A, that settlement that's within the floodplain, as having a higher impact? What would you go for? Let's start with group 1.
Vâng, và câu hỏi trong trường hợp này là các nhóm sẽ đi theo cái phương án nào? Phương án là chúng ta sẽ đi theo cái kịch bản xấu nhất, hay là chúng ta đi theo cái kịch bản mà dễ xảy ra nhất?
If I can quickly come in, so group 1 went for significant for A and B, and C went for minor. So now we need a warning for the entire area. Would you go for significant for the entire area or minor for the entire area? What would your impact level be?
Cụ thể là nhóm 1 thì đã chọn là A và B là significant, còn C lại là minor. Thì nếu mà trường hợp như thế thì các anh chị khi quyết định cả khu vực này thì anh chị sẽ quyết định cấp là như nào?
We choose significant.
They go with significant.
Severe hơn.
All right, so significant for the entire area.
Yes.
Great. Group 2, so you went for severe for A, and then significant for B and C. And this is what group 3 and 4 also did. So the rest of the groups went severe for A, and B and C just significant. What would you now do, group 2, if you were warning for the entire area?
Nhóm 2 đã chọn A là severe, còn B và C thì là significant, thì các anh chị chốt phương án cuối cùng cho cả khu vực đấy.
Severe. Severe.
Nhóm 2 quyết định đi ạ.
Significant. They choose significant.
Đã nói là cảnh báo ở mức nào, chắc là mức nguy hiểm nhất đúng không? Mức nguy hiểm.
All right, so significant for the whole area.
Yes.
And then would you
Nhóm 2 đã chọn A là severe, B và C là significant. Các anh nếu mà cảnh báo cho cả khu vực thì mình chọn phương án nào?
Significant.
Significant. Okay.
And what would you do about area A then that you had as severe? Would you make a special mention of it?
Thế thì nếu mà trường hợp anh chị nói là significant bởi vì là cái A này anh chị lúc đầu xác định là severe, thì liệu anh chị có ra một cái tuyên bố riêng cho cái khu vực A này là severe không? Nhóm 2 đâu ạ?
Yes.
Yes. They have the additional information for region A with a severe level.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Like they say, they will have the additional information or comment for area A.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, once again, I think you've done an excellent job. It's just to demonstrate really different areas of vulnerability, and this group has done very well to do that. So well done, and I hope it has helped you to just see things and to relate them to a real life situation home in Vietnam. That's all from my side. Sam?
Và cũng rất cảm ơn mọi người đã làm các cái bài tập rất là tốt ạ. Và bây giờ thì ông Sam sẽ có một số ý kiến khác.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elizabeth. Yeah, now we've finished. I'd like to thank everybody for all the work. Thank the participants for not taking a break. That was a long time you've sat there. So thank you so much. Lam, I know you are a busy man. Thanks for coming back and doing the translation. Sung Eun Kim, you've been with us right from the beginning. Welcome. Gerard, thanks for all the contribution today and everybody. So thanks so much. Unless somebody has something to add. The only thing I would say now is for the participants, if you look at the program, you see now we are going to Wednesday, things are going to change. We've been having yesterday and today, we had our live sessions in the afternoon. Now it's going to be in the morning. So tomorrow to be in the morning, and we'll have a different set of lecturers. We'll be having Paul Kuchera and Sean Boyce. Both of them, one from Barbados and the other one from the United States of America. So at that time, it will be a terrible time for Elizabeth and Gerard. If you feel like coming in at 3 in the morning, you're most welcome. But I expect that you might want to be sleeping. I will be there, Rose and I. So see you later. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, just want to remind all participants, ngày mai chúng ta sẽ có học trực tuyến vào buổi sáng, cho nên các anh chị có mặt lúc 9 giờ. Yeah, thank you very much all the lecturers for very informative presentation. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, just to explain, Elizabeth and Gerard are still with us. Friday, definitely. Okay, then. Everybody, see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Get an early night tonight, Sam.
Okay, good night. Good afternoon.
Sếp Lâm, mình gửi cái file ghi ấy, cho họ ở chỗ nào nhỉ, Sếp Lâm nhỉ?